Don't go wandering around in the middle of the night. They say Dara O'Donoghue never did rest in peace. And it is St. Patrick's Day night. You just might fall foul of Dara O'Donoghue's rusty blade.
Hello and welcome back to Geek Legion of Doom. I'm Lisa from the Lisa Loves channel, and Leo has invited me today to do a review for you for the 2025 to be released next year, currently in post-production movie, the St. Patrick's Day Massacre. This movie is from Creative Studios and it was written and directed by Steve Lawson. So we all know my memory, let's refer to the list. We have Marta, Svetek, Charlie Bond, Aviana Snow, Kieran Davies, Annabella Rich, Manoj Anand, Jaspin Summer, Ray Whelan and Ben Manning. They're the people that we mainly follow in the movie. So this movie starts off with a scene back in the 1800s. It's quite a brief scene, but it sets up the happenings that we are going to sort of like refer back to later in the movie. So in this scene, in a tavern in the 1800s, we have a character called Dara O'Donoghue that feels he has been wronged. Something has happened and he is there to get revenge for what has happened to him in his life. I won't go into any detail as to what that is so as not to spoil it for you. Then we come back to the present day. We're almost 200 years in the future and we have a group of 4 girls, 3 from England, 1 from the US, who are on holiday in Ireland. So the reason the 4 girls find themselves in Ireland is because the character from the US, who's called Lena, she actually has ancestry from Ireland and she wants to go back and see, as I think every American in the world has ancestry from Ireland. We get everywhere, we're pesky buggers. She wants to go to Ireland to see where her ancestors are from, and every year these 4 girls take a trip, these friends together, and this year in specific they go to Ireland. Well, they end up in Dublin, which is probably not the cultural heart of Ireland if you're wanting typical Irishness, but they end up in a bar in Dublin and the other 3 girls aren't too keen, they're not enjoying themselves, it's not their thing. And Lena, she wants something more quintessentially Irish. She wants to feel more connected to her roots and she feels that this sort of busy, bustling bar in Dublin city centre isn't really doing it for her. And she has a little bit of a link in there with a barman who takes a shine to her. She takes a shine to him. So she's sort of torn. Do I stay? I want to chat to this guy. Do I go? Enter a quite shifty character as a viewer by the name of O'Reilly, played by Kieran Davies. And he actually owns a property quite nearby. So O'Reilly says, I can take you somewhere quintessentially like Irish that hasn't been touched, that hasn't been changed, other than the plumbing's been updated over the years for guests to stay there. But things are very much like they were back in the day. It's very old fashioned. There's no electricity, there's like gas lamps and things. But he invites our 4 ladies back to tell a little ghost story or two and have a little drama whiskey. So this obviously is where the next section of our movie and storyline start. I'm not going to go into any more detail. I don't want to spoil the story for you, but it doesn't take too much to imagine that perhaps we are going back to somewhere that is linked to the 1800s massacre that happened many years before. So this is obviously where our story moves on from kind of just getting to know a surface level of these characters to getting into where the story is going to take us. Obviously, O'Reilly is taking the girls somewhere that has ties to what happened in the 1800s. Things are going to kick off. These girls are going to have the night of their lives in one way or another. And we're along for the ride to follow them. So I'm not going to tell you anything else that happens. You will need to watch the movie to find out. But let's get into the positives and negatives of the St. Patrick's Day Massacre. Okay, let me start with the positives. The cinematography in this movie is absolutely beautiful. The lighting is fantastic, is first rate. Sound design, all perfect. I find if I don't notice sound design, it means they're doing something right. If I'm really jarred in a scene or music is used that's really unsuitable, the score in this was very suitable for the movie, suited it perfectly. How it looked, fantastic. The use of light especially in this, as we are in a building that doesn't have any real electricity, so to speak. It's got small lamps, I would assume they're gas. Things are very old, cobwebby, that kind of thing. But the way it's filmed doesn't look cheap. I would imagine this is done, it's a small independent studio, Creative Studios. This is done in a relatively small budget, but it really didn't show by how things looked. multiple scenes, you really had to sort of revel when you were looking at it as to how beautiful this looked. It was stunning. So top marks for cinematography, lighting, sound design, perfect. So getting into the storyline and the acting, some acting was better than others in the movie. I'm not going to single out individuals, but I did have a little bit of an issue with a couple of the accents. The person that I was like happiest with the Irish accent is actually a native Irishman, so obviously that's going to sound right. But a couple of the other people doing accents did sound a bit, what accent is that? What's going on? So the accents were a bit off, I have to say, from my perspective as an Irish person, obviously a Northern Irish person, but as an Irish person. On to the not so positives. So the acting is better in some places than it is in others. There were a couple of quite weak links in that it was very obvious that they were acting. I was sort of like pulled out of the movie and sort of brought into amateur dramatics or stage show. As I say, that wasn't in all cases. I'm not about to sit and point out who. I found the acting with regards to facial expression quite good with all the girls. There was a little bit of like over dramatics of like, you know, like expressions that were a little bit OTT, or maybe things weren't cut together exactly as sharply as maybe they should have been in certain places, so we got to see certain reactions and they did look a bit comical when they shouldn't have been looking comical. But that's maybe just down to how the movie's been edited. I did find myself finding some of the performances a little bit comical, a little bit even, dare I say, camp in places. Someone that is meant to be very threatening and frightening did amuse me a little bit in places. Now that is not all the way through, I will say. I feel when the evil characters don't speak is when they're at their most strong. I feel the physical presence is definitely there. The expression is definitely there. But sometimes when lines were delivered, I felt the script a bit lacking in certain places as to certain lines that were spoken, and the delivery a little bit over dramatic, a little bit over the top in places. I did find some of the relationships very natural. Specifically Ray Whelan, the actor that plays the character Connor, who is the barman in Ireland that takes a bit of a shine to one of our characters. I found him very natural. I found his character very believable, like a typical Irishman. He had a really easy chemistry with Lena, the character, so I felt that was definitely very believable. My main issue with the movie, whereas it looked fantastic, it looked absolutely beautiful, you know, I can't fault how it looked. There were story elements that didn't make sense, that weren't tied together. There were holes in the movie, which I obviously, without telling you more story, I can't go into. Things that weren't answered didn't make sense, didn't tie into things properly. Too many unanswered questions. I do think some of the things that were shoehorned in here or attempted to be introduced weren't required. They introduced a change to a relationship within two of the friends, or something that happened that just was like, oh, please don't do this. Don't go down that rabbit hole. Don't fulfill this trope, because we're all sick of seeing it. It's ridiculous. And they're indicating that these four girls are very close friends. They go on holiday every year. They've known each other for a long time. But yet a fundamental part of one of them, a big secret that she's been carrying, none of them know, which to me was a massive hole. If these people all love one another, are all close friends, something as fundamental as what's revealed would not be something that was not picked up on or wasn't known by someone's friends. That was a major plot point to me. The whole story surrounding that was really frustratingly typical, and just something that I don't feel added in any way to the movie, and in something I personally would not include in that. It was just toe-curlingly cringy, to be quite honest with you. Nothing about the actresses that play the role. I just felt it just wasn't needed, and it was just, you just felt your eyeballs roll to the back of your head like, oh god, they're doing this. And it was unnecessary. So yeah, summing up, it is a low budget movie, but you would not know to look at the movie. This is a horror, obviously. There is not a lot in the way of gore in this. What there is very minimal. There's not a lot of blood where there should be in some places. So I would have liked them to have upped the effects a little bit, even with a little bit more blood. There's one scene at the start of this with a little bit of like makeup, which again they play back as a flashback and show you exactly the same thing. I do feel we needed more in the way of the horror effects, or we needed to lean more onto the supernatural side of things, one or the other. I feel the threat was really good, was really well done near in the end. I wasn't a big fan of this character at the start, but near in the end, much more so. It was much more threatening presence. But I do feel that it falls down in areas of tropes, in areas of just going over something that's been done 100 times before, that is very stereotypical, that's unnecessary. I would like to see a lot more. I think this movie would work much better if it had more special effects, as in, I don't mean anything overly fancy, but I mean something that is going to make you like, oh, you know, cringe, or you're going to see the gravity of what's happening. Some of the injuries that happened in this movie would cause a lot more blood than we actually saw. Or if we're not going to go down that road, go more for the sort of like supernatural, creepy, sort of ominous tone. But I do feel that that ominous tone was completely lost, and we were just following four girls on their jollies having a bit of a moan about the situation they were in. So yeah, while it certainly was watchable, and as I said before, I think the cinematography and how the movie looked, it was first rate, it was fantastic. I do feel that it was mainly let down by the script and the storyline. I do feel that that desperately needed working with. The girls did, I say the girls because they're the main people we follow in the movie. They did the best with what they had, but I do feel that definitely that storyline needed work. Tropes were needing to be removed that were just, they weren't even properly explored when we got there. It was just like, oh, let's make this happen. We're not going to explore it. We're not going to talk about it. We're just going to put an uncomfortable scene in and leave it there for no reason. There were holes in the story, you know, an integral part of what made up one of the friends' characters was not known by any of her close friends. Just things that to me as a viewer made me think, well, that wouldn't happen and this wouldn't happen. So yeah, little bits of tweaks here and there. It is a beautiful movie, beautiful to look at, very well made in that respect. But I do feel that the storyline did bring it down somewhat. So if I had to score the St. Patrick's Day Massacre out of 10, I would be coming in at a 5. Most of that is down to how the movie actually looked. As I say, I can't fault that, but the story needed reworking as far as I was concerned. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Does it sound like something that you would enjoy? Let me know your thoughts below in the comments, and I look forward to seeing you next time.